Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Hey, good morning, folks. Let's get a audio test first. Michelle's away. You're stuck with just Jim today. And I'm just verifying my audio setup. I've got lots of great equipment, but it doesn't seem to be connected properly. So I just want to make sure the audio is making out. If somebody will just give me a quick mention in the comments so I can know that, in fact, you're hearing me this morning. Let's get started with some announcements. On Monday, we have Brent Carmichael joining, and I'm going to have some fun with that. We're going to make that dealer's choice. You guys can tell me what you want to make the topic. So we'll put some polls out there today. Brent is quite experienced. He can join me and have a conversation on any topic that you guys want to hear about. So we'll just let you pick. And again, he's scheduled for Monday. And then we have a couple of V8 meetings next week. If you have an interest in joining a virtual group of 8, I think the dealers that are in those groups would tell you that they're finding that it's useful to be able to see other dealers' numbers and see a little bit of information about their business models and how that whole thing operates. So you can reach out to us. We'll put you in touch with somebody who can share with you kind of what their experience has been and see if it might be a good solution for you. And then I had one thing I want to talk about this morning. There was something troubling that came by email yesterday morning. And, for Michelle and me as, folks who are trying to put a white hat look on folks in the industry, and that includes dealers and vendors and, everybody that operates in our space. There was something that came up that was a notification from a large vendor in our industry. And they basically reported that a competitor at a recent event stood in front of a bunch of dealers. And so let's just say it this way: vendor 1 claimed that vendor 2 was going out of business or was exiting the buy here, pay here space. And, they said that in front of a group of dealers, and that caused, the vendor who was reportedly, exiting the space to get a lot of phone calls from their users. And, it's really, at a minimum, it's reckless. And, I would just say that, this morning, I'm not going to name the names of the parties involved, but this just strikes me as something that, I think at a minimum, the folks who, if they made that mistake and were negative selling, then I think they ought to own it and be, public about it and transparent, and just come out and make a public apology and clear that up, because that kind of thing is just really, that's negative selling. And it's really definitely not a white hat practice. So, we just want to put the word out that, we want to watch for that, and we want to make sure that, just watch that. When you've got people that are negative selling against the competition, that probably should tell you a little something about, who they are and how they conduct business. So, that's certainly not something we're going to condone with white hat way. So I just want to get a mention out there about that. Again, today, we're not going to name the names of the parties involved, but it's something that we're going to be watching, and to see if the parties who did make that mistake, we'll step forward and publicly own that and apologize. So again, we'll be watchful. I have got some banners up there for some reason. Let me get that fixed, and just got a super sensitive touchpad over here, so I'm touching some extra stuff I shouldn't be touching. What about audio? Can I get an audio confirmation from some of you? Again, I got a little different audio setup this morning, just making sure everybody can hear just fine before we move forward with our main topic of the day. So so you can just shoot a note in the comments there, or text me for that matter. I'll make sure my phone is silenced over here, but we just let me know if you're hearing me, so we don't waste a lot of time here without audio. So I got a confirmation here. Good. You're hearing me. Thanks for that. So that looks like maybe Mr. Michael Solomon. Good morning. And listen, I just want to get into our topic of the day. And what I really wanted to cover was this idea of how to determine if your sales volume has fallen off, which most of us would expect to see some sort of adjustment, right, in a post tax refund season period. So it's not surprising that our volume might be dipping somewhat. Obviously, when we look at April numbers, I go back and look at April from the prior year and see if your numbers are really off. And obviously the same with May to see what your travel rates are. But short of spending a bunch of money on advertising, which obviously any of us can just start throwing more money at advertising, there are a couple of things that I wanted to bring forward today to just offer as a way to assess the process before we start going into that. Because what we don't want to do is invite customers into a process that's not functioning well. So if we're missing customers, we need to first understand why we're missing customers before we go start throwing more money out there in advertising and see if there's something in particular that we can fix in that regard. So, let's get to that. Let's start with, I'm counting down for the top five, the five that came to mind for me. And let's cover this one first. So, first, how are we doing with organic efforts? And obviously it's easy for us to understand on social media. So let's talk about that. If it's a Facebook post, I'm not really suggesting, well, we certainly want to run ads and we would love to be able to go put an organic post that I'm not talking about putting any money. I'm not talking about boosting a post. I'm not talking about running an ad. I'm just talking about organic posts so that we're leveraging our audience of followers through social media. And the way we build our audience through social media is being consistent. We got to be sure that we're out there, disseminating a message that is of value on a regular basis. And so really now I'm not talking about posting something organically and expecting to sell 3 cars from that this afternoon. Now that can happen. We hope that, you have an offer in there that, would attract people and you might actually, produce some business right away. Mostly I'm talking about just checking to see, are we being active socially and organically? So that's just about consistency. That's about being out there. And then the other part of that would be email. I find that dealers are not remembering. I think they're kind of moving past and they're putting all their eggs in the social media basket and they're not really utilizing email effectively. Now, with all these that we're going to talk about here, I got something else to kind of, we'll call it, 5A, because it's one thing to reach out to customers. The question becomes, what kind of offer are we, what are we saying? What is our message? Do we have something to offer when we do that? Whether that be social media organically, a free email. Email's still free, folks, so we can get an email out to those folks who are in our customer base list, whether they're working leads, prospects, then we would want to utilize that audience to be able to build up something that way. So again, for today, it's about not spending any money, just trying to utilize what we're doing and examine what we're doing and see if there's something that we've changed, because we can all fall into different practices. Like we can drop practices that we used to be better at. And so this is part of what I'm asking us to go look at first before we start putting money into new ads. And then the last one would be face-to-face. And we covered this. Michelle and I covered this in an episode some weeks ago about some really specific organic ways to create opportunities. And among the things, when I say face-to-face, I'm not suggesting that we all get in our cars and we send the whole team out to reach the community. This is really about leveraging relationships. So social media was about our Facebook page, Instagram following, we're leveraging our followers. Email is about obviously leveraging our customer base. And then this last one, face-to-face, would be leveraging our local relationships. So are we doing that? Are we really getting out there and reaching out to those folks? And I'm not, again, suggesting we get in the car and go, spread the message immediately, as much as I'm suggesting that when we travel, whether it's sending out salespeople or whether, we got techs out or we got detail folks, it's anybody on the team who's out, that we're able to, as we speak to folks, that we're able to just conversationally make them aware of anything that we've got going on at the dealership that folks need to know about. And so this is just should be part of our routine practice. And so we're not making any special trips. We're just communicating with people in the course of our routine traffic. So this is one thing we can do. But really the question becomes in all of those, whether it's social media, email, face to face, do we have an offer for folks that is unique? Because you can say, well, yeah, we have our car posts out. Well, everybody's got cars. Everybody's got financing. If we're talking about our competitors who are buy here, pay here, everybody's got cars and financing. So what is unique about the offer that we're bringing? And then is it compelling? Like, is the offer that we're putting out there enough to spur people to act? And so, examples would be, I think we talked about on our podcast before, this idea of just, we could do a double referral reward. And then the last part of this is the offer, the offer have some urgency around it? So in other words, if I go out to my vendors and I hand them a little card that says, hey, just be aware, we're doing, this could be my point of contact person at AutoZone or any of the people, Body Shop. It's like I just hand them a card and say, hey, you might want to spread the word. We're doing a double referral reward from now to the end of the month. So it's unique. It's something, we don't typically do. It's got a timeline associated with it. So it's urgent. If you're going to do it, don't forget, don't put it off until next month. If you know somebody, you're going to want to send them now because the reward is double. The referral reward is just an example, but the idea is, what do we have to offer that is unique and has some time, some fear of loss associated with it, right? So that we've got some sort of urgency and timeline around it. So that would be the other part that I would be suggesting that we get done there. Now let's look at item 4 is looking at our leads. And, we meet a lot of dealers who don't have a CRM. So typically when we're talking about this kind of thing, we're talking about working the leads in the CRM. But, if I think of an old fashioned CRM, and maybe it's a big chief notebook. I mean, however you're tracking your traffic, incoming phone calls, web inquiries, text messages, however people reach you and make inquiries, how are we responding? Like, how quickly are we responding to them? And then how quickly are we following up with them? So I'd really look closely at the first and second response. And I think the big thing that I'm concerned about with that, one of the things we see across a lot of the dealers that we work with in a CRM system, their idea of a response is, hey, thanks for reaching out. Here's our app link. Here's a link to submit an application. And I just think, gosh, we can do so much better than that. We send a link. Well, yeah, we responded in 30 minutes. Great. Well, all you really did the same thing everybody else can do. Like, what is it that is unique, that engages the customer and makes them feel like they want to do business with you? I'm sorry, but an app link doesn't do that. Everybody can send me an app link. Everybody can look at my credit score and my credit profile when I send in an app link. You haven't done anything in that scenario to earn my business, so I'm reaching out to you. But now, if I'm going to continue to have a dialogue with you, because I may be chatting with some other dealerships as well and making my decision, what is it that you've done to have a chance to be able to make sure that you've got a way to keep the conversation going and have a chance to really bring them to you? And so to me, that's really just back to human interaction. And this is something that I think we've got to work to make sure that we are engaging. And so however that looks, again, I just think if you're sending templates and there's no real dialogue and you're not connecting with this person on some sort of human level, then we shouldn't be surprised that the engagement and the response is low from them. There's just nothing there aside from if they're really in a tough spot and have to have a car today. That's one thing. And if you're the only person who did respond, then maybe you're going to win that business. But if you're competing against others, I'm going to just ask you, what is it about you that separates you from the competition? What's going to make you unique? They probably can all send an app link. They probably can all ask the customer to fill out an application. Well, how would that win the business? So it's really a question of what are we doing? So when we start to look at that process in that way, I would say we got to figure out what is it that we can do to win that customer in that interaction. And so now it's a question of analyzing that process. How quickly are we responding? What are we saying when we respond? And now we can begin to say, well, we're spending a lot of money to create these leads. And now the question is, are we handling the leads that we've got well now? That's the first thing I'd want to know before I started putting more ad dollars out there. It's a little like our problem with underwriting and putting more contracts in a portfolio when we're not collecting well. We got to go fix our collection problem because we're just adding contracts to a portfolio that's not functioning very well. Same thing here. We're inviting customers into a lead process and we're not handling our leads very well. And so why would we expect our sales and our closing ratio to improve? Why would we expect more appointments? And we just got to begin to analyze those things. And so I think it's really important to dig into, those elements of the process first. So now when we talk about that, it's like, how do we respond? And now that leads to training refreshers. So number 3, counting down would be training. Let's get in there and examine how we're communicating with customers and look at our closing ratio. Look at our number of appointments that we set. Let's look at how many of those appointments showed. I recommend tracking in addition, and I know most CRMs don't exactly do this, but I would always like to know how many of those customers who came to the lot actually did a test drive. Now, there's a whole separate subject about one of the things I would invite dealers to consider. If you're kind of set in your ways and you're not seeing much traffic and you're not seeing much closing, then I would say one of the things I would recommend you look at is quit asking your customers to do an application on the front end. Allow them to drive, and then have a chance to find out how many customers test drive, and then you can do an application. I mean, why do we need to do an application on a customer? I know what your answer, many of you, is going to be, because I would say the overwhelming majority of dealers are doing an application first. And what I'm simply suggesting here is when the applications are being done online, or the application is being done in the building, and then we don't test drive and we don't close the deal, I'm saying this is one thing you could look at, is getting more test drives before application. Obviously, you got to have the customer at the building to do that. But this is some of the things you can look at in the interest of trying to convert more customers. It's really about establishing some sort of connection. Again, if I'm doing, because I just told you the vast majority of dealers are just asking the customer to apply first. Here's our application, whether it's an app link, online, or send them to the website, or the customer visits the building, we march them in and put them at a desk and fill out an application. Well, I'm just simply saying, if there's some problem with your sales process and you're not selling as much, maybe look at that. Let's look and see if there's something we could be doing differently in that part of the process to have a chance to convert more customers. At this point, if your sales volume is low, you don't have a lot to lose. And I'm simply saying, you can say that's an old school approach. And I would simply say it's a human first approach. It's a human first approach. And so I just am saying, I'm not following the electronic process, and I'll try it for a time. But if it's not working, and that's what we're talking about here today, if your sales volume is falling off and we're starting to examine what's maybe not working, then I would say let's go back to trying the human approach and see if we can actually win more customers that way. So training is just get back in there, check with your people, and make sure. By the way, that applies to us too. If I'm a kind of a sole operator, or it's me and my wife running the business, and she's taking all the leads, or I'm taking all the leads, and I'm meeting the customers, we can look at ourselves too, because we can develop bad habits. We can get away from what we used to do, and so we should certainly look at ourselves too. But this is also thinking about our sales team. Get back in there. Let's do some training refreshers, because when the consultant advisor in me says, when sales tank, when something shifts and sales drop, as a dealer, as somebody who's a coach, advisor, as a sales manager, maybe, I need to know that my sales process, my training and my process hasn't changed. I need to always know that part is consistent, so that I can be sure that I can look elsewhere. I'm going to offer you a couple more ways of things that we can begin to look at. If we can be sure that our training process is good and that we're still following the same process, and that all is working fine, then we can move on to some of these other things. Let's talk about pricing. And really what I'm talking about when I say pricing, we can also just roll inventory overall into that. The thing that comes to mind here is we're working with some dealers out there. And I remember one case in particular several months ago where we determined that a dealer was selling almost everything. Like it was upwards of 90% of what they were selling was from a certain price point and down. And so I would recommend that all of us go back and look at what are we selling. So we're having this conversation in May. So what's happened? We've come off a tax refund season. Some people were still enjoying some tax refund traffic in April. So we've sold through a lot of that inventory. And so now we need to go back and look at what is the situation with our inventory? Is pricing and available selection on inventory a factor now? Have we sold through the good stuff? Have we sold through the fresh stuff? And now we're left with the older units, or have we sold through the more affordable inventory and now we're left with mostly the high priced units? We got to go look at pricing. We got to go make sure that we're not missing customers based on price. And then the last one for me, and this can all be kind of talked about together, the number one thing to look at and it ties back to pricing, is going to be down payments. This is still true. Way back when I got in the car business, got in the buy here, pay here business in particular, it was said to me that, nothing dictates volume and buy here, pay here more than down payment. And I think that's generally still true. And because what you're really talking about with most customers, what are they looking for? They're trying to figure out what will it take to get in a car today. Like I'm in a tough credit spot, and we know about our customer in the buy here, pay here space. They're not great at saving money. We're past tax refund season now, so what we're talking about is a customer who probably hasn't saved up a lot for a big down payment. And if our business model doesn't allow us to get there, because what I'm really suggesting is, what's the difference between a customer who's got $1,500 down versus $1,000 down? I'm just picking numbers. Whatever your model is, the difference between having $300 to $500 less down payment than you would like, I want you to think about what that looks like, because this customer is going to be with you for 3 years. And do you really believe that the difference between that $1,000 and $1,500, as an example, is going to be the difference in them being successful with their payment? And so you have to ask yourself, is my pricing on my lot, price of cars, and the pricing on my down payments such that I have got a solution for customers who are in a tough spot, haven't saved a lot of money? So this is the first place to go to look and to figure out if we are missing some business around down payment. And by the way, you can advertise down payment. It's just be careful. We did a podcast with Allison Harrison, the attorney out of Ohio, months ago, and you can do a search on that. I think we used triggering terms. Just look up triggering terms on our playlist on YouTube. And when we talked about that quite specifically, you can advertise these triggering terms, finance terms. So just quickly, what that means is, when I say triggering terms, when you put an ad out there that says, this car is $1,000 down or $999 down, that triggers in an advertising context that you're promoting financing, right? You just offered, if you said $95 a week, that suggests financing. So now you've triggered the idea that you're offering financing, and you're required by law to disclose now the terms, which you can disclose, put in a fine print, create a disclosure, and run your ads that feature down payment, and then just do full disclosure about the terms when you offer that financing. So I think down payment is still our biggest driver of traffic. When we can offer an affordable down payment, or when we can just get to an affordable down payment, then that allows us to move the needle in terms of volume. And look, this is a whole business model / underwriting conversation. I'm simply saying, if we're looking at reduced volume, then maybe what's happened is we've sold through our most affordable stuff. Now we got more expensive stuff, and we're holding out for more down payment. And it could even be that we spent too much money on a particular car or a particular group of cars, and so now we feel like we have to hold out for more down payment. Well, let me just offer this idea. When you make a mistake, and I've been there, like I was a dealer, I would sometimes spend too much on a car, or buy a car today and the AC quits working on the way back to the dealership, right? And so now I got AC compressor and all the stuff, and now I got an extra $1,000 in this car I wasn't counting on. So that can happen. It can be an actual mistake that I overlooked. It can be just bad luck. But what I really want to kind of drive home today is that What we got to be careful about is making a second mistake because we own the car for more. Now we're holding out for more down payment and setting that down payment based on cost. And look, I get it. Cash and deal is a big part. We can't make those kind of exceptions all the time. But when we make a mistake of owning a car for a little more than we should, a little more than its market value, then we don't want to make a second mistake by setting the down payment high based on that. And now the car just sits. And so that's kind of in that shame on us category. We're making a second mistake. The car's sitting. And so this is something that we can move the stuff. We just got to, maybe go back and assess your inventory. When I say pricing, I'm talking about the selling price of the car. Why? Because a lot of you out there are trying to do your financing based on a certain term. You're trying to stay at 36 months and you're quoting all your payments on 36 months. Well, even though the customers a lot of times will sign that contract, it's pushing them up into a higher payment because your price is here, your term is here, the down payment's here. Guess what? Payment's got to be up here. And so now we got to watch that super closely. And so sometimes when we're not paying really close attention to it, then that can begin to really become a problem. And we look up and say, why aren't we selling anything, right? And so what's the deal? Where'd our volume go? And I would just simply say it's something that we've got to be watchful about and make sure that we're not creating a second problem by holding out for more down payment. And so just look at down payments, look at pricing. Let's just make sure that those things are going to make sure and help us to not be a hindrance when we do succeed in creating interaction with a customer and we do get them to the lot or whatever that process looks like for you, however you might move them through the process. Then just understand that we got to make sure that we aren't missing them or failing to connect with the customer based on those kind of elements. So let's just take a real hard look at those pieces. And I mentioned a couple of the podcast topics from the past. I'll put a note in there that you can still find on YouTube. We have 2 playlists. We've got our White Hat Wednesday and single playlist. There's actually more than that, but the ones related to the morning show will be White Hat Wednesday playlist and then all morning show broadcasts in the YouTube channel. So hop over there, subscribe to that. Again, you can do a search on that triggering terms topic. You can probably do a search on down payments, these topics that we're talking about today. You'll find content specific to what we're talking about. We just crossed 300 episodes in 2 years. So odds are we've talked about the thing that you're wrestling with right now. So, fish out some of that stuff, be a subscriber over there on YouTube and you'll find all that information there. So we'll wrap up for that in that area today. I just think we wanted to make sure that people understand that that's the stuff that I think we can do without spending any money. Go back and assess, where we're at with those things and make sure that we've got, got our processes down, that we're doing what we can organically to reach customers, and let's leverage those relationships and audiences that we already have. And before we start throwing more money at the thing, let's figure out what's out there that we can do. So that's the idea. I just want to make sure we get those things covered. And so we're going to wrap up there, let you guys get back to your Friday. Hope you have a great weekend. Don't forget, we got Brent Carmichael on Monday. If you have a topic that you'd love to hear from Brent, go over into the BHPH Success Group. I'm going to put a Facebook poll in there shortly, and let's get some feedback on topics. And then you can text me. A lot of you have my number. Just text me and let me know what you'd like to hear Brent talk about, and we'll have him here. We love having Brent come around because, like I say, our audience always learns something. I always learn something when Brent comes around, so we're excited to have him here on Monday. So just let us know what you'd like to hear from him. But again, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'll see you back here on Monday.